Here are the props that you might want for today's class. 2 blocks, blanket, bolster, strap. Again, I think you've all heard me say this in the past, but you may not have all this stuff. So if you don't have a strap, just grab a belt. The bolster could be like a firm pillow, like a couch pillow. Blanket, beach towel might work, something like that. Blocks, those are the hardest to replicate. And they're some of the most useful props actually in yoga. So most yoga studios, if they have limited space and they only get like one prop, a lot of times it is the blocks that they get. So good idea to invest in a set of blocks if you don't have them. And every studio that I work at that is opening, they are not going to have props for you when you go back. So I went and taught yesterday in person, and the studio I taught at, there were 0 props. There were no blankets, no blocks, nothing. And that's going to be the way it is for a while. So now is really a great time to invest in a set of yoga props. You might be thinking, well, I'll just wait a few weeks, and when COVID's passed and I go back to the studio, then I'll use their props. Well, they may not have any for you to use because they're worried about contamination. Okay, so it's definitely worth the investment. They're not that expensive and they last a lifetime. All right, so I think that's enough time for the latecomers. I'm going to go ahead and get started. We are doing a very unusual sequence today, so I want to get that out of the way. Unusual doesn't mean bad. In fact, sometimes unusual, is better. People like it better. I like to do things like this from time to time where we're maybe a little more creative. I have my standard yin sequences and, they're very similar from one to the next. And then I have more creative sequences that are more different. They're outside of the box and they work the body in a different way. And I do this for a few reasons. One is you don't want to do the same thing all the time with your body. It's just not that good for your body. I know that mentally we might like that routine. We like that sort of rhythm, always doing the exact same thing. That's why sequence classes are so popular. I don't think we have them at Nirvana, but some studios I work at, they have sequence classes. And the sequence is identical every single time. And I see people go to these classes and it's like the same people every single time. And they go religiously every single week. And it's like their thing. And while it's good to practice regularly, but they don't do any other classes. At least some of them don't. And they just do this one class. And it's like very type A, like I know what's going to happen. I know what to expect. And I'm going to get better at doing this thing. Well, it's not the greatest thing for your body. Body benefits a lot from variety and doing different things. So some of you were in the vinyasa class with me that I just finished teaching. Every week, I'm trying to change it a little bit. We do some of the things that are the same, but then we change some things. And so with yin, same way, I'm trying to change it. So physically, it's good for us. And then the other part of it is mentally. So again, these people that I see going to these classes, they tend to be very mentally rigid. And we don't really want that in yoga. We want to learn not just how to be flexible in our body, but also flexible in our mind and in our heart so that we can adapt. Things change. Look at how much has changed over the last few months, right? And things are totally different. I never thought I would teach yoga from my bedroom, and here I am doing that. So that required adaptation. I had to learn to hook up my camera, buy a microphone. I had to adapt to the new reality. So when we take a class and it's different than we expected, and we get all bent out of shape and, oh my God, why isn't he doing the normal yin thing? That's what I wanted. This helps us see that we're mentally or emotionally, there's some rigidity there, okay? All right, hopefully no one here has that problem today. So I call this the clock. And one of the characteristics of the clock is we're going to do, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 postures before we really take a break. So usually in my classes, we do a couple of postures and we take a break. This one, we're going to keep going for a while. Okay, so let's start on our back in what we call a pentacle pose. Just relax, close your eyes. If you were in the last class, we talked a little bit about that open sky awareness. And it's not a bad place to start this class as well. Just noticing that we are the space in which all these experiences, sensations, emotions, and thoughts arise. They will come and go. That is their nature. That's both the good news and the bad news. So if I like eating chocolate, I can only eat chocolate for so long. That experience will pass. But if I hate certain things, those experiences will also pass. Okay, we start with a cat tail. So we'll take the left leg up. We're going to drop it over to the right side. Okay, and then let's go ahead and prop ourselves up on the right shoulder, or right hand, sorry. And we take the right leg, move it back away from the left leg. Then we're going to bend that knee, reach back and grab the foot. And we are stretching the front of the thigh and also twisting our spine. So you want to sort of lay back that left shoulder as much as you can. Take as deep a twist as you can here. Okay, now you can play around with some things. We're going to be here for 3 minutes. Left leg straight or bent. You can bring it higher, which tends to intensify the stretch. How far you lean back into the twist, again, that's variable. Position of your head, so you could stay up here on your hand. You could bring your head down onto your upper arm. You could put a block under your head. Lots of different options there. Okay. So this is called the clock because we're going to rotate our femur bone, which is our thigh bone, through all 6 of its articulations. That's why there's 6 poses in this sequence. And simultaneously, we will be rotating the spine. So right now we're in a spinal twist, and we will finish this little first sequence. So the class is in 2 halves, and they're symmetrical. Okay, so we do 1 half, and then we mirror that on the other side, and we do the other half, and we take a break between them. So we are starting with a twist in one direction, and this half will finish with a twist in the opposite direction. So the spine actually sort of gets worked twice, if you will, and then each of the thighs get worked once very completely. That's kind of the simple way of thinking about it. So, you know, a clock rotates, and that's what we're doing here. And these creative sequences just come from little relationships that I notice in the body. As I've practiced and as I've studied over the years, I've just noticed that certain positions of the body work the hips and they work the spine in a certain way. And this particular sequence tries to take advantage of those common relationships. And so hopefully by the time we're done, you'll see what I'm talking about. It helps if you know your anatomy, but it's not essential. And the most important thing is hopefully you feel it in your body. We have just a few more seconds left here. For some reason, my laptop's being really noisy today. I'm not sure why. Some days it's fine, and it's very quiet, and then other days the fan turns on when I stream. Okay, so don't come all the way out of it. We will move into a half seal. So watch me, and then you can come into it. So come into this position. This knee can continue pointing out to the side, but I can also bring it in more. And then I want to come up and back as much as possible. The target is still my right leg. So the front of my right hip is getting a stretch, okay? And this is called a half seal pose. If you were here last week, we did this posture last week, I think. Or no, wait, we didn't. I think we're going to do it next week is what I should be saying. We'll do it in a different sequence. I don't teach this posture that often, but it's in these two particular sequences. Now, this is a good place for us to talk about use of the props. I like propping myself up in this one, pushing myself a little further back. Again, there are two targets. One is the front of my right hip. The hip flexors are getting stretched. Simultaneously, I'm gently compressing my low back here, okay? So the spine is going into what's called hyperextension. And this is called half seal. So it's a lot like a pigeon or what we call a swan pose in yin, except you'll notice this foot is over here. Now, we want to be careful about the knee and the ankle. I know Uta injured her foot, ankle, so she may need to modify. And if you need a hand with that, let me know. But very often students can figure out, you know, how to position their body on their own. And oftentimes they can figure it out better than the teacher can. So the key, and I think all of you know this at this point, all of you have taken my classes enough time to know that the key is that you feel safe and that you feel the influence of the posture in the right area. So that's going to be the front of the right hip and the low back, okay? So this is called extension, and we're working the hip flexors here. A little less than a minute left in this one. "20 seconds. This is one of those poses that a lot of times you count down. It's kind of intense. So you like, oh, how much longer are we going to be here? Just a few more seconds. Okay, now again, please do not come out of it. Watch me. And I'm kind of at a weird angle, so I'm going to turn around so that it's easier to see me. But just imagine that I didn't turn around, okay? Imagine that the camera turned. Imagine I had a fancy camera set up and I didn't need to turn my body. Instead, I could just switch cameras. Okay, so I'm here. What am I going to do? I'm going to take this leg out like so. Okay, so this is what we call a frog or type of frog. I'm actually going to rotate again to a better, and you can rotate a bit if you need to stay on your mat, or if you have limited space. It's just that we're basically moving one thing, which is this leg primarily. So I swung it from behind me and now it's over here, okay? And what I'd like to do now is fold sideways over that leg. So I reach down and do this, okay? And then if I can, I roll that left shoulder back, stacking it over the right shoulder, and I'm stretching here. So again, this sequence, every posture has two areas of influence, in here and then over here, hips and spine, okay? And so this is, again, one of my sequences where we are targeting two areas simultaneously. And what that does is allows us within an hour to create a lot of influence in the body. The downside, there's always a downside, okay? So It's very rare that you do something and there's no cost. So even if there's a huge benefit, there's usually a cost as well. And the question just is the cost worth the benefit? So the cost here is it's difficult. It's less comfortable. It takes more effort, right? This isn't like the super relaxing yin posture, right? This pose requires more work, more effort. And so, you know, that's what we find here in this posture is, okay, I'm working my waist, you know, my spine, I'm working my thigh, but it's more work. It's difficult. It's not as relaxing. So I mentioned earlier about sort of mental and emotional resistance to change or doing something unusual. What you'll often find is if you let go of resistance um, and expectation, very often you'll find that whatever life brought you is actually exactly what you need in that moment. And this can be a really difficult idea to swallow, you know, because life might be bringing us an injury or it might be bringing us a death of a loved one. And we might think, no, this is just bad. But again, what yoga teaches us is if we can let go of that resistance and the idea that we actually really know, we often actually find, you know what, this is, I got a lot from this experience. Okay, now just going to modify that by folding over the leg. And if you like, you can bring this knee in. Okay, so now it becomes more of a hamstring stretch. Now it's the back of the thigh and also back along the back side of my spine. Now, if I'm very flexible, I can begin sending this leg back into a kind of a split. Okay, so you could even do like a full split if that's you. That's not me. That's a little too much for me. So I'm just going to stay here. But if that's you, feel free to go there. Okay. So again, you'll find that we're just sort of changing one thing or a couple of small things in each position, and then it's changing what parts of our body are being influenced. And as always, again, I'm going to say it because you maybe can't say it too much. You need to make sure that you feel safe here. Okay, good. Each of these, again, are 3 minutes. And it's nice in a sequence like this because this sequence has some challenging postures. So sometimes that's when we're glad that it isn't a full 5 minutes because it can be kind of intense. So about halfway through this one. And this is just half frog. If you're in the last class, I spoke a little bit about breathing into the stretch and using the breath to help release tension. You can do that here. You could even use those techniques that we used in the last class. Usually in yin, I recommend just letting the breath be natural. But sometimes we want to use the breath. We want to use that tool. And it is a tool that we can use at any time that we want. So if deepening your breath helps release that tension, for whatever reason, I'm feeling just a ton of tension in my hamstring today. So this is, you know, an example where I might want to do that. Slow, deep breaths, releasing that tension in the back of my right thigh. Okay, don't come out of it completely. Again, watch me and then do what I do. I'm going to take this straight front leg and I'm going to bend it. And I'm going to take this leg and bring it behind me. We call this sleeping swan. All right, again, I'm going to turn because I can't change camera angles, but you don't need to turn. So I'm here and I'm turning for a reason because I'm going to add a twist to this. So I call this twisted swan. I bring my right shoulder to the ground and left hand to the right, and I push my shoulder back into the twist, okay? I mentioned earlier that we started with a twist and then there's a twist toward the end, and that's what this is. I can also do this, push me back a little further. If you're kind of rolling onto one side, you could put a blanket underneath your left hip, and that can help you sort of stay in position, okay? So again, just pushing that shoulder back, twisting the spine, and we are working here as well. So I'm kind of losing that, so I am going to grab a blanket. And again, this is where we're just pragmatic. What works, what doesn't work. And our body changes from day to day. So normally I don't use the prop, but I'm going to today because for whatever reason, I'm not able to get that stretch in my hip. I'm kind of rolling out of it too much. Okay, so here I am. And I feel the stretch in my hip, pressing that shoulder back, twisting the spine as best as I can. Again, awkward, right? Awkward, it's a lot of work, but it's yin. It's still yin yoga. One of the mistakes, I train people to teach yin, and one of the reasons why I can train people to teach yin is I learned it from the gentleman who created it. So when you study with the creator of this style, you learn the parameters, the outer edges, what is and isn't yin yoga. And so as much as people might associate yin with relaxation or easy or effortlessness, and indeed yin can be like that, and I would say maybe the majority of classes are like that. Today's class requires a little more effort. So I think most of you have heard me say in the past that yin, there's no absolute yin or absolute yang. Yin and yang happen on a continuum. Okay, so some things are more yin, some things are more yang. This is more yin than, say, sun salutations, right? But this is less yin than, say, just sitting in a relaxed forward fold. Okay, our next posture is going to be quite yin, so don't worry. Just stay there for a moment longer. I'm going to double check my sequence, make sure I don't skip anything. Yep. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to simply roll onto our back. And we finish with a banana. Okay, so we come back onto our back. And then what we'd like to do is take our left leg to the left, take our right ankle over the left ankle, reach up, we're going to grab the right wrist with the left hand, and then we scoot ourselves all the way over, all the way over, all the way over. Okay, and so we feel a stretch here in the left waist this time. So remember earlier we were stretching our right waist. Now we're stretching the left side. Earlier we twisted in the opposite direction. We just finished twisting in the other direction. Okay, so again, the clock, sort of like we went around in a big circle. And this is our last posture in this set. We'll rest for a moment and then we'll do the whole thing on the other side. So again, the way we really want to judge yoga and exercise, the exercises we do in yoga, is really over the long term. So the way my teacher, Paul Grilly, put it, is exercise, the long-term effects of exercise are the opposite of the short-term effects. So, you know, short-term, the sequence might feel kind of like, it's difficult. You know, maybe when we finish, we don't feel particularly relaxed. But the way we want to judge yoga is over the long term, not just from a single class, although you might feel very relaxed after this class, just sort of depends. But again, over the long term, weeks, months, years, decades, a lifetime, we want to see the effects of our yoga practice and feel the effects of our yoga practice. And this is something that generations of human beings have been able to attest to. And I think most of you have probably experienced at least some of this in your life. It's one of the reasons why many people keep coming to yoga, is once they get a taste of that transformative effect that yoga can have, they're hooked for life and they keep coming. Now, I do want to say that there are many different kinds of yoga practices, and the postures are not really the most powerful tool. So if you enjoy what the postures do for you, one day you want to start to look at some of the other techniques, because you might be surprised at just how much better you could feel. Even better, right? Maybe you're like, oh my God, no, I love my yin and my vinyasa, and that's all I need. I feel so good. Well, what's wrong with feeling even better than that? And it's possible. So a lot of people, I think, don't think that they could feel any better than that, but you can. All right, let's unwind, and we're just going to rest on our back, relax, feel that rebound. So if you scan both sides of the body, can you feel that right side? My whole right side is, I could say, vibrating. It feels sort of tingly. The left side, by comparison, feels relatively dull. We did work the left waist, but we didn't really work the leg very much. You know, I don't really feel, even this right arm feels stimulated, but on the left side, I don't really feel it as much. So of course, we're going to do the other side. But this is one of the interesting things about doing a longer sequence that focuses on one side, is sometimes we can really feel it becomes a little more dramatic. Yeah, I definitely feel something is different. Now, we might not understand what that difference is or how important it is, but what yoga teaches us is that feeling of tingling, of aliveness, is very important. It literally is keeping your body healthier, more alive, literally speaking. Okay, let's start on the other side. So on this side, what we want to do is, whoops, moving in the wrong direction. We're going to take our right leg up. We're going to drop it over to the left side. Okay, so again, this is called cattail. Just going to move that singing bowl out of the way. Prop the head up, bring the leg back, bend the knee, reach back and grab the foot. And again, this is a twist. There are two, right? This one and what I'm calling twisted swan. So we want to really try and milk that twist as much as we can. Really try and get as much out of it as we can. All right. We're also stretching the front of the thigh. So again, this particular sequence targets hips and spine, twisting the spine and stretching the front of the quadricep muscle group and hip flexors to some degree. 3 minutes. 3 minutes is a good amount of time in yin. Some of you have done my mirrors sequence, which is just 1 minute because we work into the shoulders as well. That's extremely rare. That's the only sequence I have where we have that 1 minute hold time. But a minute still counts as yin. I'd say anything less than that, and it's questionable. But 3 minutes is definitely in the yin zone. And of course, you could do 2 minutes as well. All right, that's the halfway mark. Sometimes at halfway, it's good to check in, see if we want to adjust something. Again, we can relax back into that broad, spacious awareness, loving awareness that is our true nature. And like I said in the last class, the sky is limitless. And so are you. There's nothing that the sky cannot hold. And there is nothing that you cannot experience when you understand yourself, what you really are. When we really understand what we are from a yogic perspective, it can be a game changer, and it can change everything for us. But this is more than an intellectual understanding. It's very important to say that. Okay, so what are we doing here? We will take that leg that we've been holding on to, okay, and we are going to let go of it and prop ourselves up. And again, I can keep this leg here if I want, that's fine, or I can bring it to point forward more. That's really a personal choice. Okay, this is our half seal pose. And again, this is the one where I like to use blocks, but your mileage may vary. And usually our mileage varies when it comes to yoga because our bodies are different. And so because our bodies are shaped differently, they can do different things, and different things will be safe for one body or feel comfortable for one body and be problematic for another body. So this is why you've probably heard a yoga teacher, may have been me or may have been someone else, but at some point, if you practice yoga for a while, you probably have heard a yoga teacher say something like, you know, keep your eyes on your own mat, or don't compare yourself with others, that kind of thing. And the reason for this is, yeah, you really can't compare yourself with another. Just because someone else can do something, it doesn't mean that that's something for your body to do, or that you should be able to do that. And by comparing ourselves and then trying to do what other people do with their bodies, if we're not careful, we can end up with injuries. Now, I do want to temper that with what might seem like the opposite direction, which is I always tell my students to try and do everything. So when I give instruction, instead of deciding, well, I can't do that with my body, so I'm not going to do that, I always recommend try and do as much as you can. And the way I say this is usually always do your best. So let's say I'm a person that can't do an arm balance and the teacher's teaching an arm balance. Instead of saying, well, I can't do arm balances and just not trying, my recommendation is go ahead and try. Because I've had students who didn't think they could do them and they did them for the first time in my class because I just said try and they did. And then they were surprised. Oh, I can do this. And the other thing is by trying, you actually create changes in your body that are beneficial. So it's not so much about being able to do the arm balance. Who cares if you can do an arm balance or not? But by trying to do the arm balance, you actually benefit your body in specific ways. Just like this pose. Maybe you can't do this pose completely. That's okay. By trying to get as close as you can, you will be creating benefits for your body. Okay? That's what's important. All right. Now, again, this leg basically stays as it is. I may have to move around a bit to show you, but what's basically going to happen here is my left leg is going to swing out from behind me. Okay, now I am going to turn so that I can face the camera, but this is the position that I am in, more or less. And this is, again, a type of half frog. This is what we will call a lateral half frog because I'm going to move over sideways, laterally. So I begin by folding over the foot and the leg, and then I rotate or roll my right shoulder over my left shoulder, and I'm trying to stretch here. Later we will stretch here in the banana, but right now I'm trying to stretch into my right waist. And this is the second time we're doing that, right? Because we already did this banana on the other side. So this is already loosened up some. Maybe we can go a little further. Okay, so it's very torso intensive because, again, the legs each get worked once. Excuse me. But the torso sort of gets worked out twice. All the areas in the torso get worked twice. All right. Again, kind of awkward. Not the easiest position to hold in. We're stretching in here, so the inside of the thigh. Now, I do want to mention, you probably feel it back here as well. I know I do. So these are your hamstrings back here. And then in here are what are called your abductors. Now, the wall that separates these two muscle groups is called adductor magnus. And so adductor magnus separates the hamstrings and the adductors. And almost anytime you're stretching the hamstrings, especially these inner ones, you're probably also stretching adductor magnus and vice versa. So we don't want to get too, uptight about, oh, I'm also stretching my ham. You're probably going to stretch your hamstrings as well. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. Just a little over a minute left here. Again, this is not a bad time to see. Maybe I can take it a little further. Further isn't always better, but sometimes it is. Again, nice, powerful stretch. I really feel that in my leg. I've been doing, these types of stretches for over 10 years. My spiritual journey started with meditation. That was kind of the first yoga that I learned. And then, after a while, I started doing the postures as well. And I think my hamstrings are still stretching out. So one teacher I know says, measure your yoga practice in decades, not even years. So decades in practicing, we can still be finding our body changing and transforming through our efforts. All right, now we just fold over the leg. And again, this can stay where it is, or you can pull it in. And now this is, again, much more relaxed, generally speaking. And this is what we would call a half frog. And we're trying to stretch this hamstring. okay, right in the back of that thigh. There are other hamstring stretches you can do, but what you'll notice is the way I've sequenced this class is the legs, this leg has more or less been doing the same thing. It's hard to explain, but hopefully you're seeing the kind of method behind the madness. We're just sort of moving the body in a logical order. We're changing one or two things, and by changing those one or two things, we're changing the stretch that we're getting. So it's sort of like a natural flow from one position to the next. At least that's theoretically how it works. Whether or not we personally have to move everything around or not, that's a different story. Okay, got about 2 minutes left here. Less than a minute. All right, so now what we'd like to do is change position. And what we'll do is take this leg, the front leg, we'll bend it. We take the back leg and we send it back behind us into basically what we call a pigeon. Now, again, I'm going to turn so that you can see me. You shouldn't need to turn at home where you are. Okay, so I'm turning so you can see me, and I add the twist to my swan. So again, this is the twisted swan, and I am going to put a little bit of support because I did on the other side. I'll assume I'm going to need it on this side as well. So laying down on my shoulder, I'm twisting toward the bent leg. Okay, so I'm twisting to the left. Joining my palms together, I push that shoulder back, and again, I want to feel it right in here. So I'm trying to keep this hip down while I'm pushing the shoulder back. Okay, and again, it can be awkward. It really depends on your body, what you feel here. You may have to play around with the position a little bit. What do we want to feel? I want to feel a stretch out here, and then simultaneously, I want a nice twist out of it in my spine. Granted, it's probably not going to be the deepest twist for your spine. Interestingly, this twisting can sometimes enhance the stretch here. And that's usually how it is for me. Today, for some reason, again, I'm having difficulty getting that. I'm not sure why that is. And that's a good point to bring up, that our bodies do just change. You know, it could be a permanent change. Like, you know, maybe my body has just entered into a new phase where it's harder for me to stretch in this position. Maybe because I've opened my body up more. But a lot more likely is it's just today or this week. Maybe I did some stretches earlier that, opened up my body in a certain way. And then, the next time I do this, there'll be enough tension there for me to feel it more easily. It really doesn't, we don't have to sit here and figure out why our body is, feeling the way that it does. What we want to do is just, again, recognize what's happening and then adapt and adjust our practice so that we are getting the benefit. So we are trying to work the glutes, which are the muscles out here, the rotators deep down in that hip. And then we're also rotating our spine here by doing this. So we've brought the leg into external rotation, and then we're bringing the spine into rotation as well. And that was true when we started. The cattail brings the leg, at least potentially, into internal rotation. And then we are bringing the spine into rotation as well. So again, that's a little insight into how I sequenced the postures where we're rotating both the hips and the spine at the same time. Again, I imagine some people who may do this class, some people watch the video later. They might be very resistant to doing this. They might just be doing the swan pose. But why not do something different for once? Every now and then, do something different. Break out of that routine. Okay, from here, we can just roll basically right onto our back. Okay, coming back onto our back, and we will do a banana. And this time we're going to move to the right side. So you might want to scoot over to the left side of your mat. Bring the right leg to the right. Bring the left leg over. Okay, and then reaching up, grab the left wrist, and we'll move everything over. Moving over, moving over, moving over. And so we find that stretch in the left waist. Okay. And then we just want to hold that stretch. Now, ideally, the stretch comes down into the hip as well. This is called adduction, when the leg comes across the midline of my body. So again, each of these positions has two areas of influence. One is the spine, the waist here, and then the other is down here in the hip. Now, having said that, you may not be able to get much down here. It just, again, depends on your body. But at least we understand the intention. That's our intention, is to bring that stretch right down into the hip if possible. Good. About 2 minutes left here. A little over a minute. In a minute or so, we're going to come out of this pose and we're just going to relax for a moment on our back. Then I'm going to give you some time to counter stretch, and I think we'll have enough time for a brief body scan. So I reduced the time of this class from 1:15 to an hour. I find teaching online is more stressful than teaching in person. So 2 classes back to back. I've pretty much about had it at the end of this class, and I found those extra 15 minutes were really, really trying. And I apologize for that if you enjoy Yoga Nidra, but I usually do a Yoga Nidra every week for free. So if you like that practice, you can go check out my Yoga Nidra. They're usually longer. And again, it's free of charge. It's donation based. So if you enjoy that practice, you can still do it. All right, let's unwind from here. And we'll come back to pentacle. And again, let's just feel that influence. Can we feel, hopefully more balanced because we've now worked both sides of the body. But then also, we just finished with the left side. So, you maybe still feel that left side is a little more sensitive. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze and shake it out, a little bit of movement. And again, we have enough time for a brief body scan. It's not exactly Yoga Nidra, but it's the basis of the Yoga Nidra practice, which is usually includes some kind of a body scan. Okay, so we're going to just do a real brief version of that. So lay back on your back. You can put a bolster under your knees if you like. My home is really warm right now, but if you're got your AC on high, you can cover yourself with a blanket. Close your eyes, shut off the lights, shut off the music if you can. And again, this isn't going to be too long, but we're just going to move through the body. And generally what this does is encourages relaxation. If you're someone who suffers from insomnia, you might try doing this at night, okay? So relax on your back and get very, very still. Close your eyes. And bring your attention down to your toes. And just feel the toes. Now the ankles. The knees. The pelvis. Abdomen. Chest. Fingers. Wrists. Elbows. Shoulders. Throat. Shin. Face. Head. The back of your head. The shoulder blades. Your back. The buttocks. Thighs. calves, heels, and the soles of both feet. Now the entire body. The whole body. The whole body resting within spacious, vast, limitless awareness. All right, everyone. So I recommend that you stay there maybe for a few minutes more if you have time. If not, you can begin getting up. But if you feel nice and relaxed, it's not a bad idea to just stay there on your back and relax. You may naturally drift off into a sort of meditative, sleep-like state. But if you stay on your back, you will likely pop back at some point. And at that point, you've really fully rested. Let me know if you have any questions or if there's any way I can help support you as a teacher in this time. It's tend to be very stressful times for many people. But luckily for me, yoga works. I feel very centered, very grounded, at peace, and I'd love to share that with you. I hope to see you next week. We have Vinyasa at 4:45. Thank you to those of you who came to both classes. I always love that. Uta, I hope you feel better soon and you can join us for both. And I'll hope to see you all next week, if not before. I'll be hopefully doing a Dharma talk this week on Sunday evening, so maybe I'll see you then for that. Have a lovely evening, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.